In my 8 years as coach of the Sydney Swans, two players who caused me more sleepless nights than most opposition players were James Hird and Nathan Buckley. Both champions, they lit up football grounds around Australia for 15 years. Performances that were awarded with Brownlow medals, Norm Smith medals, multiple best and fairest and All-Australian Guernseys. In 2012, Buckley joins Hird as an AFL coach, rekindling their rivalry from the box. Recently, I sat down with these two young men to talk to them about a range of topics as they prepare to lock horns again. Here it is, two legends, Hird and Buckley. Well, Hirdy Bucks, welcome to the MCG. Certainly a ground we all love playing on, but just memories for you guys. Firstly, you, Hirdy.
Oh, probably the two premierships in '93 and 2000 are the greatest memories. And you know, when MCG was our home ground back in the 90s, just the amazing crowds we used to get and the great experience of playing here on a Saturday afternoon, whether against Collingwood on Anzac Day, whether it be against Carlton, whether it be against Richmond. The feeling you got was a really special feeling on the middle of the MCG with your tribe around you, your crowd around you, and nothing seems to ever be able to replace that.
Bucks?
1980, first time I came and watched the game. It was actually a Richmond-Collingwood game, the old three wooden panels for seats and trying to stand up and look over the people in front of you. And it's always been that. I think it's fairly iconic. Heard he was talking about Essendon having it as a home ground. I've been fortunate enough to, through the Collingwood career, to have it as our home ground for the majority of it. And 90,000 people sort of rocking up, it gives you a reason to work hard during the week to take advantage of.
Yeah, just reflecting back a little bit, I mean, your careers are just remarkably similar. Best and fairest, Norm Smith medals. I think you even played in the same junior team in Canberra.
Yep.
So you reflect on that now. I mean, what do you think now? You're sitting here as coaches of two of the biggest clubs in Australia and about to embark on, it's no guarantee in coaching, believe me, but 15 years of coaching against each other. How do you reflect on that?
It's pretty obvious in retrospect, I suppose, where the pathway has gone, but you wouldn't have had any idea. Hirdy and I've got the photo, and presume Hirdy's got it, but we're sitting there in St Kilda, Guernseys, for the Ainslie Footy Club. Sort of the Hirdy won the best and fairest one year. I think I won it the next.
And so then you missed a couple of games that first year.
I wasn't there. I was in Darwin.
Yeah, played 7 games.
But and then ultimately, we're 26 years down the track, 26, 27 years down the track. So you never really know where life takes you. But I'm sure Hirdy would say that it's easy to look back in retrospect.
You obviously played against each other a lot, so just a word on Bucks as a player, and then I'll get you the same, so be kind if you want.
Oh, a great player, and obviously someone that we always focus on trying to stop, and whether it was the early days at Brisbane when he came on the scene, pretty much myself and a lot of young Essendon players that you look at Bucks and winning it was Norwich Rising Star back then, wasn't it, when he won that, and sort of obviously one of the best young kids in the competition, going through and. Probably the best thing about Bucks is you used to watch his kick. That laser, just absolute boom kick. And I remember talking to our weights coach at the time, had been at Collingwood, a guy called Loris Bertolacci, about the power Bucks would just get at, and you'd actually hear his foot just go whack on the ball, and that was the Nathan Buckley kick. And I would have loved to have been on the end of a few of those. I know Sav was pretty happy, wasn't he?
Occasionally,
he dropped a few.
Apparently, I kicked him too hard.
Too hard, did you?
In the end, like Hirdy. 93 premiership player as a young player. I mean, I'd swap the Norwich with you if you wanted it. But I think the Anzac days stand out, and it's well publicised. The rivalry between Collingwood and Essendon, and the opportunity to play on that day. But the thing with Hirdy was just the opportunity to stand up when the game was on the line. Stand next to him, just having a chat here. Not a massive unit, but played centre half forward for the majority of his career. Very good in the air. But just that innate ability to impact the contest, and lead his team to victory when it mattered.
I mean, generally you both pretty much got tagged throughout your careers, but was there ever any stage where you directly played on each other?
I remember maybe 2002 Anzac Day. We'd won the last probably 3, and I was going all right early, and she's moving on to Bucks, and I think would you kick 3 in the second half, or? I remember, anyway, there's vision of Bucks kicking a goal from basically 50 out and me standing behind him because the game was gone. And that kick basically put him, the wet one, basically put him 3 in front.
That was a point?
was a point, was it?
Yeah, I was celebrating a point. And it actually,
there you go.
Yeah.
So he didn't even know what it was.
I walked back to the centre.
He was disappointed.
Yeah, he was disappointed.
Yeah. Presty was the only bloke that actually realised it was a point. He's trying to yell at everyone, but he doesn't talk. So he's just doing this one.
I reckon we played on each other a fair bit for a quarters or half a game, all this sort of stuff. And, I think you actually rise to that challenge of being, all right, Bucks is there, let's go arm across and let's go for it. And that's, it's one of the great things in footy where it's all about, strategy and structure and all this sort of stuff. But when you get on a great player and you're going one-on-one, the ball's there, it's a great feeling where I want to beat him. I want to see what one-on-one we're like, and that's one of the really nice parts of footy.
Well, Hurdy played, obviously played different roles than I did for the most part. But the other thing is we went through an era where the best players didn't often play on each other. There was a lot of tagging going on, and closing down the opposition's best player was probably the first port of call rather than taking them on head to head.
So moving on now to the coaching stage. I mean, Hurdy, you've got 12 months on Bucks. So if you were to pick one thing, what would that one piece of advice be?
I don't want to give advice, he's been in coaching longer than I have, but just that headspace. I reckon you get home at the end of every day and you don't have headspace so much, because what I mean by that is that you're the person everyone wants to speak to all day, every day. And trying to do that, but also get away from that and have some time to think about your game plan, about your structure, about your players. Probably that's the thing that I found hardest last year, was when am I going to get time to actually think through the issues and come to decisions rather than just making bang, 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 bang all the time. So gathering that time, and Kevin Sheed had a really good word for it. He used to call it sunshine time. When are you going to have time to go and sit and think about what you want to do with your players and how you want to treat them? So that's the bit that I found quite difficult, and losing, mate. It's no fun to coach's box when the game gets away from you.
And Bucks, as I mentioned before, so you did it a little bit differently. Probably could have had the chance to do it straight away, as Hurdy did. So 2 years on now, what are the real things that you feel a lot more capable of doing that perhaps you wouldn't have had you gone straight into it?
I think perhaps, as Hurdy mentioned, the awareness of what it's like on the other side of the relationship as an assistant coach. Being able to go through that process, you own your own little team within a team, and to be able to work with those players and understand how you fit into the bigger structure of the club. So I hope that's going to stand me in good stead. I believe it has, to understand the development coaches, the assistant coaches, and the position that they're in the footy club, what they need as so far as support goes, giving them enough I suppose direction to sink their teeth into, to make sure that it all comes back towards the ultimate aim of producing successful players and successful football programs. So I think that advantage has been, I think that is an advantage. I think it's something that stands me in good stead at the moment.
Don't want to dwell too much on last year, but because it's all about moving forward for you now as a senior coach. But from the outside, there was that perception, and I must admit I picked it up myself, about Mick, and it just seemed uncomfortable. But on a day-to-day basis, I mean, did that manifest itself within the footy club?
Well, I think that's another massive advantage that I've had, is I've been able to work under one of the best coaches of the modern era, and even the past era, because he's been doing it for a long time. Mick was excellent, a great person, great mentor to learn from. Quite obviously, I mean, in any footy club, if you don't have robust discussion and if you don't have debate, well, then you're not going to be successful. So there were times when we had quite robust debate amongst the coaching group about how we're going to do things. Can we do it better? Can we treat this? What are we going to put this player through as far as training goes? What's his program and what's his process? Can we improve it? That's all part of being involved in a club structure, in a coaching structure, and Mick taught me all about sort of how to be a part of that, an effective part of that, and how to get my job done as well as I possibly can, and showed me a lot of how to go about it as a senior coach. So there's no way that any of the external stuff was going to affect that.
It's interesting, one of the things I did at the end of my footy career was write down some of the things that I would and wouldn't do I reflected as a player, and the things I liked about coaches, things I didn't like. Is there one thing or two things that you just hated, and don't even have to mention the coach, but you just hated and you vowed, as both of you as coaches, you'd never do?
For me, it was all about time at the club. Like, when you're there, work hard, make sure it's valuable time at the club, but don't have big periods of the day where players are doing nothing and wasting time. Because I think that as a younger player you can handle it, but as an older player, particularly with families and you're trying to get some extra study or trying to look after you, trying to make sure you've got a career later, you want to make sure that all the time at their club, they love coming to the club, they want to be there, but it's worthwhile. And one thing we try and do is that if they don't need to be there, let's get them out of the joint and try and have blocks in the day where we can get them out. Because that's what I think. If most footballers retire because mentally they're shot, and so how do you keep them fresh and excited? And if you can see your players training hard and laughing when they're at the club, it's a really good sign that things are going pretty well.
And Bucks, for you?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit difficult to say because my existence or my reality might be different to half of the players that are in the list at the moment and going through their fledgling beginnings of their career, I suppose. But I think Hurdy's pretty well spot on. I didn't like idle time at the club, but I think the professional players will find time. They'll always find opportunities to do other things and will fill their time. So I think you've probably got to educate the other guys around how to maximise their time there. But I always enjoyed my time at the footy club. It was always something that I love to do. And I think trying to foster and manufacture that in some ways is pretty important. So I'm a pretty serious character, but I've got to make sure that I've got personalities around me that are drawing the enjoyment out of it and finding the enjoyment out of every opportunity.
I mean, we know the game's evolved and we've seen it evolve and so forth. Where do you see it going in the next 12 months, 2 years, 3 years?
It's a good one, mate. You can answer.
Well, I think it's pretty clear that the AFL are keen to reduce rotations. And in the end, I think every club will go into bat for where they believe perhaps either a competitive advantage, and I think that's first and foremost whether they declare it or not. Most clubs are batting for their own competitive advantages, or whether it's a belief that the club believes that this is a more attractive brand of footy, that we should maintain this current path of legislation, I suppose. But it seems that the AFL want to reduce rotations, try and reduce congestion around the ball. They've been very clear with what they're trying to do. Yeah. So it might go to 2. If it goes to 2 and 2 in the next couple of years, it's going to become once again a more aerobic game, more transition. It's going to bring the repeat speed endurance sort of back into the game at the moment, because it has come fairly ballistic, fairly powerful sort of efforts and then off for rest, and then powerful efforts again, Dane Swan type ballistic running. But it may go back to an aerobic type game where there's a bit more space through the midfield, and the transition's going to be very important.
I think the problem I see with that, and get your comments heard, is probably fine for you guys because you're both great athletes, great aerobic athletes, but it just seems they're trying to narrow the window of the type of players we can bring into our games. I mean, the really exciting Indigenous players that perhaps haven't got the aerobic capacity. I mean, do you see that as a danger to the game?
It's an interesting thing, actually, you talk about guys who haven't got that natural endurance. If you do go to 2 on 2 and you're after a more endurance game, you might be taking out the really quick guys. And unfortunately, some of those guys are Indigenous. Like the Indigenous guys have fantastic speed, fantastic skills. Just because of the way they're trained as kids might not have that endurance. So that would be very sad if they do go down that path. I think one thing that footy always have is that gladiatorial contest type thing, and we would just keep seeing that every year being able to win the contest and being strong in the contest is becoming more and more important. And the best teams, 2 or 3, are always the best teams inside the contest. And that's a great thing, because you never want a game where the contest goes out of it. And yes, it might open up, but I reckon if your team is able to win the contest, you're halfway there.
After the break, James Hird talks about trying to get his men to compete harder for longer, while Nathan Buckley reveals how he plans to tweak Collingwood's game plan in 2012.
More specific footy questions now. I guess, Hird, you went into last year with a real, publicly stating you needed to improve the defence, and I thought probably the first half of the year you're outstanding. I mean, your players' ability to man up, win the contested football, they're offence to defensive transition was terrific, but they did seem to lapse into some bad habits later in the season.
Yeah, I think physically we just weren't able to keep it up for as long as we would have liked. I think the players knew what we wanted and they wanted themselves. They went out with really good intentions, but physically we were a 2.5 quarter game, 2.5 quarter a game type side, and we're half a year side, and that's about physically preparing them in the right way, and that doesn't happen in 1, 3 or 4 months pre-season. That's a gradual thing. So we would hope that trend would continue, and instead of playing for 2.5 quarters, we can actually 3.5 and then see how that helps us. And a lot of our pre-season this year has been about the physical preparation. We thought the tactical side of it, and the ideas we've got are the right ones, but we've got to get our players to the point where they can execute for more than an hour, and that's a challenge.
And it does take time. I mean, particularly to go from a free-flowing type offensive game style, and as you said, publicly defensive. And I thought, first 10 weeks. I mean, interesting Collingwood though, Bucks. That game style that you guys had, which was very set. I felt grand final day, and I got the impression that there was much more of a one-on-one sort of style. And was that because you didn't want Scarlett free at one end? And I just felt maybe in that circumstance it's very hard for a team to change what they've done so successfully for so long. You didn't really have one free defender, and did you feel that? Did you feel that really hurt you trying to change for that one game?
Yeah, I'm not going to dwell on going too far back for too long, mate. But look, we going one-on-one. As a football club, we're not afraid of contested opportunities and playing in tight football and one-on-one type situation. I think we did go there a little bit more in the grand final. Geelong, we know, are a very free running side and very good with their ball use. You need to have pressure on the ball at all times, and we felt that was the way for us to go about it. For 3 quarters, it looked pretty good. Ultimately, they were able to wear us down and deserve their victory. So I suppose from the flip side of that, not necessarily a tactical thing, but you come into a pre-season and our players are feeling fairly keenly the pain of that defeat, and they've been on either side in the last 2 years, and as a coach I'm very aware of where the mindset of our players are, and tactically we will amend some of the things that we've done in the past to try and stay ahead of the curve, I suppose. But in the end, as Hurdy mentioned earlier, and as we saw for the first part of the grand final, if you're playing contested footy and you're winning contested ball, you're in pretty good shape.
On that, what do you think will change slightly, with yourself there? I mean, what are some of the things you probably want to work on, or you have worked on pre-season now for a couple of months?
Yeah, well, we've got a very strong defence, so we build our game from our defence, not just in our back six, but right across the ground. So that's the focus on that is not going to change. We've got some fairly strong weapons forward of the ball and in the midfield, so to give those boys in particular probably a little bit more of an offensive bent, the opportunity to be more effective going forward and a little less predictable with the way we move the ball. Just
to each of you, and you've probably touched on already, but if you had to pick one stat in football, and football's littered with stats, one stat for each of you, what do you want your team?
The same one.
I still want to win the ball. I still want to win the ball, and that's and win it back as quickly as we can. So, it's really boring, and you hear people talk about it all the time. But unless you can get your hands on the ball, it's very hard now against the best teams to actually get the ball back because they're very skilled. I mean, when we played Hawthorn out here on a Friday night, and we didn't win the ball, and they're so skilled that we just couldn't get it back, and you get absolutely smashed. So, first thing you can fix up is winning that ball, and people talk about kicking efficiency and time in forward half and all those things, but normally there is a result of winning the ball.
Contested possession differential. 95% of the games that we won the contested ball in last year, we won the game. So I mean, and that probably helps when you've won. We were able to win as many games.
Can you win almost every game?
Yeah, but so we didn't win them by losing the contested ball. So really, that everyone. As Hurdy was saying earlier, and you can hear, Brendan McCartney, who obviously Hurdy would know well, has gone across to Western Bulldogs. Sando's gone across to the Crows, and all of the coaches, I'm talking about it, Hurdy's talking about it, we're all saying you've got to be able to win your own ball. I'm sure you were talking about it quite a bit too.
Well, I got criticised for it, but that's probably for another show. You know, I'm glad you blokes have made defensive stuff.
Who criticised you?
It's a long. I'm an old man. I can't remember those things. But I'm glad you blokes have put defence fairly and squarely, because I think that's fantastic.
So we're going to come out of our careers, however long or short they may be, with a grudge. Is that what's?
No, I'm relaxed. I don't know. I can't. My memory's very short memory. You touched on it, Hurdy, and we talked a little bit about before, and Bucks is about to go into it, but it is that mix of family. I mean, the footy is 24 hours a day. I mean, how do you find getting time with the family, and maybe some advice for Bucks as well on that?
Look, my family's the most important thing to me, and I wouldn't do this job if I thought it was going to compromise my family. Yes, you work hard, but there are a lot of jobs you work hard in. I think you just got to set some boundaries. That the footy's footy, and you work hard, and you're there, and you're clocked on. But creating time when you can get home with young children at a certain time and when they're awake is really important for me. So I create a time in the day that I, sort of 6, 7 at night when I can actually see them. I can work all day before it, all day after, all night after if need be. But there's a specific period in the day that I want to see them. And luckily, my boys are only young and my daughter's young, so I play sport early Saturday, Sunday morning. So unless we're in a state, you actually get to see that. And they're really important things for me, that you have that family time together. And they often get forgotten, but actually trying to see your wife now and then and have a normal conversation with her tends to help your relationship. So if
and not talk to her about contested footy.
That's right. Yeah, she's not that interested in contested footy, and knowing Nathan's wife not that well, but I wouldn't imagine that contested footy would be the topic at the dinner table too often.
Collingwood, big football club. Are you prepared to say no? I mean, because you're going to have to say no, isn't he? You're going to have to say no to a lot of things. Have you thought about that? No, I can't do that. No, I've got to spend time here, because I think that's a really important part of the balance.
Yeah, look, I think there's got to be non-negotiables with how you go about things. I mean, whether it's a game plan, whether it's your structure during the week, or your personal life and your balance. So I suppose, once again, the experience as an assistant coach has given me an insight into that, and I reckon there was no balance in my first year at the footy club as an assistant coach. It was just more is better, and that was probably an attitude I had for the majority of my playing career as well. So that comes pretty naturally to me. But I didn't have a young family then, and you probably can afford to be more selfish about it. But the other thing you want to be able to do is lead by example and have a good balance in your life, and be up when you need to be up, and to be an example to how to go about it. So work very hard when you're around the place, but make sure that you've got the ability to switch off and enjoy other parts of your life, so that you're energised and full of beans when you come back to go again. I've got 2 boys, 5 and 3, and once again, just as Hurdy said, you end up getting back to spend a couple of hours with them in the evenings, and my wife and I generally sit down after they've gone down to bed for an hour or so, and make sure that we try and sort of separate football from the conversation, and just touch base. Touch base. Yeah.
Now, boys, we've talked a lot about balance and doing the right things. Now, being in the media now, we are going to keep an eye on you. So I just want you to cast your attention onto the behaviour of some of these coaches.
Remember that case? That was his last game. He was a West Coast coach. His last win.
You know, if that's going to happen, I want to show you the outcome.
It's not a good look, is it?
You look all right.
I'm not sure about that.
A few little tips from me how to go about it, all right?
You're not allowed to smile. You got in trouble for that too, didn't you? Yeah.
Well, boys, hey, listen, look, it's been great to catch up with you, and good luck in 2012.
Thanks, Richard.